Okay, welcome back, guys. Today we are going to learn how to create tileable greebles using Zbrush and Photoshop. We will be using the Greeble generator, which I will have the link below to where you can go see the demo as well as download. At the end of this, I'll have a little bonus on how to create this little tech ball, or tech cube, not a tech ball, using just ZBrush and Keyshot, using your new tileable Greeble that we will generate here in just a minute. The reason I'm doing this is earlier today I was asked, how do I make a tileable version of your Greeble? And I was like, I'm not sure. And so with a little experimentation, I was able to figure it out, and we're going to go through that process. So let us open up ZBrush, close him down, and find your project file, your 1024 by 1024. That's what we're going to work with today. So there it is. Open him up. Alright, so now let's make our Greeble. I'm not going to go through all the nuances of how to work the Greeble right now. That was on a previous video there, so just to streamline things here, I'm going to turn this nanomesh off. I'm going to go to Greeble 2, turn him on. Now I got all those nice little bolt patterns going on in the background there. We'll just random seed this real quick. See if we find something we like. Alright, that'll work. And what you want to do is go to your pipes pack. And I've doing this a couple times. I did this tileable thing a couple times. And basically, you don't want to have too much information, because when I designed this, I had no intention of making it tileable. So we want to take away some of the information. So I went to index 0 on the pipes pack, and I clicked hide others. Okay, so now I got rid of some of those pipes going on in there. So I want to do the same thing with block party. I want to narrow it down to just one. You can use any one of them, but I'm just going to use our crazy looking keyboard looking one here, because it really does add a lot of variety to your texture that we're fixing to generate here. And you'll see why we don't want so much extra junk in here in just a minute once we start making this thing tileable, because we don't want so many repeating patterns. Alright, I'm going to go with him, and I'm just going to go to the bolts pack, and I'm going to turn him off. Okay, so like I said, we don't want a heck of a lot of information going on here. Alright, so go into your subtools here, pick the Greeble that you're using, which is 2 in my case, and I'm going to shift and hit that down arrow there, and it moved it to the bottom of the pack. And since we're not using the bolts pack, I'm just going to delete it. And then go up to our pipes pack. First of all, we need to make all the instances into actual geometry. And what you do there is go to your nanomesh, and you hit 1 to mesh. Okay, now it brings up the other one because it's now actual geometry. Just click delete all. It'll delete everything else in there. And then we will go to the block party. We'll do the same thing, 1 to mesh, delete all. And then go to Greeble 2 and 1 to mesh. Alright, so there we go. Now we've got a rock solid actual geometry going on here, not instances of geometry. This true geometry, as you can see, our total points have now gone up into 202,000. So let's go into our subtools now. Now we can do our merging. So We went to the pipes pack, merge down one more time. Now we've got all three of them on the same subtool. And what we'll do now is I'm going to duplicate 1, 2, 3. And what we're going to do here is we're going to offset all of these meshes, okay, to where we can get a nice tileable pattern. So the left side will mirror the right side, and you'll see here in a second. And to make things easier to see what we're doing, I'm going to solo on that top one there and go into your deformation. And we're going to mess with this offset right here. Okay, so let's work on the left side here. We're going to offset. I'm going to push it over to the left. So it would be a negative 100. Change that from X to Y. Now we're messing in the Y. We're going to do the upper left corner here. We're going to drag him up. Okay. Now if you hit your down arrow, it'll take you to the next subtool. Okay. So let's work on the left side still. We'll offset in the X. Turn X off. Do Y. Now you want to do opposite this time. You want to do a positive 100 offset. Okay. Now let's hit down arrow. And now we're going to work on the right side. We'll work on the upper right. Okay, turn your X off. Y. Negative 100. Okay. Alright, we got him fixed. Now let's go to the final one. And off to the right side if we go. X. Y. And bring them down to the lower right. Alright, so now we should have a tileable greeble. Hit solo, turn that off, and this is our tileable greeble now. It will pretty much mirror both sides. As you can see in this bottom right hand corner starts matching up to this upper right hand corner. This little guy right here matches up to this little guy over here, and so on and so forth. It's not perfect, but I think it gets us pretty close to where we want to be. So I'm going to do a quick render. Alright, we're done rendering now. Alright, so we got him all rendered out here. Zoom into actual. Document. Export. Get rid of these ones I did earlier. Bear with me a second. Save. Okay. And then export the depth. Yes, I know, I already made it. Alright, so now let's go play in Photoshop real quick. Alright, so let's open up those two that we just created. Alright, so there they both are. Click and select them. You can do this in whatever application you like. I have Photoshop, so I'm going to use Photoshop today. And the reason we're going into Photoshop is ZBrush has got a nasty little trick when you make textures. And I'll show you real fast. Go to your filter, other, offset. And if you notice there's this nice little line going up and down both ways, vertical and horizontal. For some reason, it puts a very small border around it. I think it actually scales it like 2 pixels and then puts this border around it. I don't know why. I've heard other people have the same problem. So a quick fix for that is we're going to change our canvas size. Okay, because we created 1024 by 1024, we're going to now make it a 1022 to 1022. Okay. Alright. Now, let me throw that offset on there again. It's gone. We now have a tileable texture. So now, repeat the process with your depth map. So image, canvas size, alright, and don't really notice much of a difference. Now we'll just do our offset one more time to make sure we use the same one, and now our depth is lined up perfectly. So now we have a nice tileable texture. Save each one of them. You can do that offset back or leave it as it is. It doesn't really matter. So now, back in ZBrush, let's find a model to play with. Now, go to Plane 3D and frame him up there. Okay, offset him a little bit. And make sure he is a Polymesh 3D. Now he's editable. Go to your UV map. And we'll create a 4096. Map border 0. Create. And UVP, or planner. And click it. Now, let's take our texture map. Let's go get that texture map we just made. And we want the BPR render, open. Click him on, get rid of some of the jagginess there, scale him up. Now, you can go into your UV coordinates here, UV map, and you can start tiling. So we'll just do a simple 2, 2. It is now a tileable texture. And with really no visible seams. Obviously, the more you tile, the more you're going to see a repeating pattern. And that's basically it. And you can add your displacement right on top of it, or your depth map in this case. Open. Crank him up a little bit. Now you can see you got a nice little bump going on in there. Pretty cool. So now let me show you what you can do with this. We'll make that little tech cube I told you about earlier. Go to hit Polymesh 3D. Go down to your initialize. Just crank them down to 1. Q cube. Okay. UV map. Same variables there, with the exception we are now going to do UV tile. Okay. Now, put your texture map on there. Got to re-import it back in. Let's see what's going on there. Oh, okay. Thought there was something wrong there. Nope, nothing wrong at all. And at least go to displacement, import your depth. You can now have a nice little bump map on this little 8-point model. Make some real cool things like that. But we're going to start playing with our displacement here. We're going to do a true displacement on this model. Now watch what happens when you hit mode. What just happened? Okay, well, it's trying to project the displacements on this very, very small mesh. I mean, there's not much to it, so it's trying to displace all that information. It can't quite do it. So we need to start dividing. So go into your geometry. We're going to have to crank it up pretty good. Take your smooth off, because this way we keep those nice sharp corners going. Divide, divide, divide. Now we can start seeing our detail coming out. Divide. Now this is just inside ZBrush. Okay, so we haven't really applied this to the mesh, and I'll show you that here in just a second. But we need to crank it up. At 100,000, this will not project nicely onto this mesh. It may look pretty now, but trust me, if you hit apply displacement right now, it's not going to look that pretty. We want to get into the millions. Okay, right now we're at 1.5. Well, the model I used earlier, I did it one more time. So we are up to subdivision 11, 6.291 million. Okay, so now go down to your displacement here, and all you got to do, you can tweak your intensity if you want. I mean, I'm pretty happy with that. It looks awesome. Actually, looks better than the last one I did. Now apply displacement. Give it a second to percolate, and boom. Soften the edges just a little bit, but I'm pretty happy with that. And it still has that texture map on it. It's still using that texture map for all the color information, or lack thereof at the moment. So we're looking pretty sharp there. And if you ever want to try to edit this again, you're going to have a tough time. You notice how the polyframe's off? Well, it's something to do with the displacement map. When mode is turned on, it turns off in your transform palette the quick 3D edit. Now if you turn that on, now we got full functionality back. Just a little tip there for you. Alright, so let's go play in Keyshot. I'll show you how to make that tech ball look pretty awesome. And I'm going to send this over to Keyshot real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, gang, here we are in Keyshot. ZBrush has nicely sent everything over for you. And let's take a look at our little tech ball here. Runs a little sluggish because I'm capturing it at the same time here. Zoom in, we can see all this detail. Just really cool. I like it. So, but let me show you a little trick there. You're probably wondering, how did I get those crazy lights to emit from the mesh itself? It's not a material trick. Well, it is kind of, sort of. I'm going to throw a quick environment on here. I used the indoor factory. Alright, so real quick, what you want to do, on your double click your mesh, and it'll bring up the material that you're using. Don't mess with the color, it's already sent the color over. But one thing it'll never do, it'll never send a bump map over. So we go back to our original BPR depth, open it. Okay, the coordinates aren't correct. It's doing a box map right now. We want UV coordinates. Now everything lines up perfectly. You're asking why I put a bump map back on there. And I'll show you here in a second. So I ain't going to mess with his height. We'll go ahead and mess with his height just a little bit. I'm going to crank it up to 20. You won't see the biggest difference in the world. Kind of makes, gives those crevices a little more contrast to them there. But here's the big trick on getting that cube to start emitting light. We're going to add a sphere. Okay, and it comes in quite huge. So we'll click Scene, Sphere, open him up. Position, scale him. Alright, he's shrunk up pretty good. Let's hit Snap to Ground, see how big he is. He's not bad at all. Let me scale him just a little bit more. And you want to make sure that sphere is inside your mesh. As you can see, he's inside the mesh. Now with that polysphere, go double click it through the scene manager there, and then it'll bring up the material. Change that diffuse to area light diffuse. Did you notice something with our tech ball now? The crevices are starting to emit light. And the reason that's happening is the bump map we applied. For some reason, whenever it's inside the mesh, it will project. It'll kind of the light will kind of bounce off the edge of that bump map. And let me change that color. Let's go to red. I always like the red in there. Always looks cool. And let me show you with the material bump here. If you crank him up, you'll see a big difference. We'll go up to 50. Now you can see a lot of light leaking around there. It won't actually emit light, but it's pretty cool when you set up the camera and the special effects and stuff like that. So let me get him off the ground real quick. Okay, so he's up off the ground. And under your camera settings, first let's go to environment. Ground reflections, turn him on. And you can start seeing down here is starting to render out everything on the bottom side of that tech cube that we just made. Now under camera, go down to effects. It starts reacting to that. There you go. Now you can start seeing it. Let me zoom in just a little bit. You can see now it's adding that bloom effect to those light parts there. Now you can see all these little firefly, what I call fireflies anyways. To reduce that, let's go back to the material of the sphere on the inside there. Click off visible to camera, click off visible and reflections. And that will diminish that quite a bit. Also crank up your samples. I usually use 32. You might have to go a bit higher with this. I think you might. I don't know if that's going to help any. But yeah, now we can't see as much of those little fireflies going on there. But you can always remove them in post. That's what Photoshop's for. But yeah, that's it. That's my little Tilable Greeble tutorial and my little tech ball tutorial all in one. Hope you guys have a great day and make some cool stuff and share it with me. Let me know.